Okay, hello, I'm Nicholas. A few months ago, I was asked to take part in an interview about a fun peer-to-peer personal project of mine called the Drogulus. My mysterious interrogator turned out to be from a project called redecentralized.org, and I discovered that over the next few months they were interviewing several developers of peer-to-peer, distributed, and federated systems. This evening, I'm switching roles. I'm joined by the three people responsible for redecentralized.org to give them an opportunity to explain themselves, describe the motivation behind redecentralized.org, and tell us about what they have planned for the future. So I guess perhaps the first thing that we should do is find out who each of you are. So, Francis, who are you?
I'm Francis Irving. I'm a programmer and activist, and I did lots of the My Society democracy stuff, and now I run a startup called ScraperWiki. And mainly for Decentralize, I seem to mostly do videos, like do the interviews at the moment.
Okay, so for people who aren't familiar with My Society, could you just say a little bit about what that is to give a bit of context?
About 10 years ago, a bunch of us realized that we could use the internet to improve democracy for people. And we did a bunch of sites that help things like find out how your legislators voted, that kind of thing. And they've spread all around the world now and led to lots of other projects.
Fantastic. So, Ira, who are you?
Hi, I'm Irina Bolychevsky. I'm one of the founders. As well as redecentralized.org, I also work on sort of open source tools and open data for the Open Knowledge Foundation, which is a kind of global network non-profit loosely based in the UK.
Okay, and Ross, finally, who are you?
Hi, I'm Ross Jones, and I'm a developer. I work on lots of open data portals, and my main interest in Redecentralized is trying to find out whether the most interesting part is the technology or whether it's the business models.
Okay, cool. So, Francis, what was the motivation for starting the Redecentralized.org project?
So I noticed a while ago a project called Unhosted, which is one of the ones we've got an interview with them coming up soon, and it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was the first thing that really excited me that was going on the internet for a long time, because it kind of meant I could get control of my data again. And then more recently, I met you, and you were doing the Drogulus, and I thought, oh, there's a few geeks doing these kind of really interesting projects, which some interesting new algorithms that like Kademlia and so on happening that on the supply side, and then on the demand side, people want this decentralization. They're either worried about privacy, or increasingly, I was talking to lots of people who are worried about resilience as well, like the ability to cope the network to carry on working when it's disrupted by disasters. So although that need and of people worrying about those two things and the supply of there being interesting new technology coming on, like came together, and I decided I wanted to know about all of the projects.
So Ira and Ross, how did you get involved with the project?
So this is something kind of we talked about for a while. I think some of the kind of the motivation or the spur for me came with the various kind of revelations about Snowden and NSA, and I was just sort of outraged by how, people were talking about The Guardian was obviously publishing articles, but everyday people weren't necessarily engaging or discussing these things. And I think it's because it's really difficult to understand what can you do, and what are the alternatives, and what's the call to action. And I thought it'd be really interesting to kind of look into kind of technological solutions. I think obviously the policy and the politics needs to take on a role, but I think technically speaking, we need to raise the price of mass surveillance as well. So I think a lot of that kind of fed in with the kind of things that Francis has been talking about.
Cool. Ross?
I remember stumbling across Francis's first video and thinking it was really interesting, and I wanted to know more. And I thought getting involved would be a really good way to try and help direct the interviews that we get to do. And I'm really, really anti-advertising. And I saw this as a good way of trying to help break people out of silos.
Right.
And Ross also started the massive, crazy GitHub repository of all the different projects that we actually use as a basis for the interviews.
Okay, and that's acting as a sort of a village pump where people can provide pull requests for new appropriate projects that might need to appear on your radar, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So Ross, where can I find this magic repository?
It is on github.com /redecentralize with a Z.
Fantastic. So Ross, here's a question. Here's a question for you. So what do you mean by decentralize, and why the re prefix?
So as we probably all know, but not everybody does, the original internet was decentralized, which gave it a level of resilience. The claim was always it'll survive a nuclear attack, and it at least saved against people hacking through a cable with a pickaxe in the American Midwest more than one occasion.
Yeah.
But as time's gone on, everyone's merged into these silos.
So what do you mean by a silo? Give me an example.
So Google Plus, Twitter, Facebook, we trust them with an inordinate amount of information. We don't always think through the consequences, and they rarely act in our best interests unless there's direct profit to be gained.
Yeah.
So what we're hoping to do is re-decentralize, is push people out of the silos again, voluntarily, obviously, to try and use services that are more decentralized and distributed, and take advantage of innovation that's just not happening at the moment.
Right.
Okay. Or
Okay.
doesn't seem to be happening.
Okay, cool. So so you've interviewed quite a number of people already. So Ira, what precisely do you hope to achieve by interviewing these various geeks?
Yeah, so a number of things. I think the first thing is really to showcase some interesting projects, which gives an example of the kinds of things that are possible and the people who are actually working on it. I mean, some of the projects are really actually genuinely kind of exciting and revolutionary. I mean, a good example is the Serval project, which allows people to connect and talk to each other when neither the internet nor the mobile networks are up, which doesn't simply have consequences on kind of disaster situations like hurricanes, but also could be used underground in mountains in the developing world where infrastructure is poor, but actually the number of devices is quite high, so lots of people have mobile phones, so it's actually conceivable for you to connect to somebody through other people's devices, which changes the playing fields, and I think it's just kind of interesting. And again, people working on protocols of how you can by default own your data and only kind of give it out and share with specific applications, perhaps via a license. We live in a world where, it's taken as granted that in order to get the kind of attention or the publicity or the reach that you need, you have to give away your content. Mm. So as a writer, as a photographer, you upload things to, whatever, Flickr or Facebook or Twitter, and actually you're giving away the rights to your content. So that's sort of one motivation. I think with the interviews as well, we want to start exploring how we can build a sustainable business model in some of these ways. Like, how can we get one of these projects to actually succeed and beat an existing massively centralized service, which could be Gmail, or if it's not about just beating them at their own game, but how can we sort of change the rules, change the playing field, and lead to more innovative and kind of awesome ways in which we can connect and work together or collaborate, learn, spend money, govern. I mean, this I think doesn't just affect kind of communication. I think decentralization in general is a kind of fascinating concept in terms of how we actually talk to each other and do things online as well as in the real world.
Yeah, one of the things that strikes me about what you're doing is that there's a great opportunity for things that could only be uniquely done in a re-decentralized sort of a manner. Wow, there seems to be an earthquake in Liverpool at Francis's place. It's a good job I'm just about to ask him the next question then, so before he dies he can answer.
There's an earthquake?
Yeah.
Seriously? That's insane. But I mean, one thing I'd say is it's also, we're not obviously just trying to do interviews per se. Yeah. I think we want to have a more broader scope, and a lot of it is bringing people together, bringing projects together, raising the profile and awareness of this whole thing, but also kind of connecting the strands. I think there's a lot of different things that fit under this loose roof, some of which are privacy, some of which are, you know, innovation, resilience, but also like open protocols, ownership, you know, cryptocurrencies. There's kind of multiple things, and it's very difficult as someone who isn't deeply within that specific silo to really actually engage with and understand. So we kind of want to make it more accessible, relate things together, and kind of bring it to a wider audience that's more digitally literate, but not necessarily kind of actually technical.
Right.
Yeah. I just want to say that one of the main things is that the technologies are sort of available now and are there, but for them to actually reach, to get as many people as use Facebook, to get 1 billion people actually using decentralized technology, we've got to get the design right as well, the usability, and we've got to get the marketing right to have some way, maybe like spread Firefox or something, to spread to lots of people, and we've got to have the business models right. And part of what we're trying to do with Really Decentralize, we're talking to real projects that are really making things, because it's delivery that matters. People have talked about this stuff for a long time. But we also want to try and go, well, how can we help those? How do we get the people who are doing those projects to get better at marketing and get better and find business models? And can the rest of the community help do that?
Yeah, and the lessons that can be learned and kind of spread, and by kind of showcasing and connecting these people, we hope that they'll build on each other as well.
Cool. So here's a question then for Francis, as promised. So what plans do you guys have for the future to help you achieve those aims?
So the very near future, in terms of the interviews we're already doing, we want to try and do some which are with people who are good at design and marketing and business models. So maybe, say, the guy who worked out the WordPress.com business model, for example, would be if we could get him, would be a good kind of change. So real projects that have done interesting decentralized business things. We want to look closely. There's hundreds of projects now on the list that Ross has on GitHub.com/redecentralize, and we haven't really looked at all of them in detail, and we'd like more help from the swarm, from everyone, to both interview those and to assess them and rank them in different ways and work out which are the good ones. And I'm imagining at some point somebody will emerge to making a project that feels a bit like GNOME did in the 1990s, like the desktop project that really made the Linux desktop get as good as Windows. We're looking for something that will pull together lots of different bits of technology and different ideas and make an actual product that has a good experience as a whole.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So part of this is you're hoping that people will step up and get involved and get in touch with you and things like that. So, Ira, where can I find out more about this sort of thing? And how can I get involved? Well, obviously I am involved. I'm interviewing you. How can one get involved in this sort of thing?
So we have a website where this is where the interviews are hosted, so you're probably there. But redecentralize.org.
Yeah.
And we're on Twitter, we're on GitHub, so they kind of you can create an issue on GitHub and sort of make suggestions. That's public. We have a newsletter, but we also just set up a mailing list so that people who kind of feel that they want to become members of this movement or organization can actively get involved and post the list and sort of make suggestions like, hey, let's get a working group around connecting around finding funders for some of these projects, or let's get a working group around really tackling a particular issue like making self-hosting more accessible, because there's so many different projects actually doing that, and which one should we pick or focus our efforts on?
Ross, can you say how to join the mailing list?
Yeah, if you email to redecentralize@libralist.com, it just takes care of all the sign up via email. There's no website or password. You subscribe and unsubscribe via email. It's really straightforward.
Cool.
Oh, and the other thing, just to finish what Ira was saying, the new wiki is also probably a good place to add some new stuff.
And all this information will be surrounding us on your website, above, below, left, and right. Yeah. Right. Okay. So I have a question.
So before we go in, like people should, we also get emails. So people write to us at hello@redecentralized.org, and I think it's fantastic the level of passion and interest. But also, we don't always have all the time in the world to kind of help out or reply. So which is why post on the mailing list. Showcase what you want to do on the wiki so that other people can sort of say, yep, I want to join up to that. And I think that would be a really kind of great way to kind of move things forward.
So these all these things that you've been telling me about are very tech heavy. How do normal people who don't know what a wiki or a listserv or something like that, what are you doing to address their passion to join in with Redecentralize?
So realistically,
you have meetings.
At the moment, I mean, actually, the main people who are really interested are very technical people.
Yeah.
And we are focusing, sort of the interview questions that we have are, we kind of ask, what does this mean from a user point of view? How can you use this product? What can you do? And we're widening the pool, slowly, but not like completely. So, write to us and we will be happy to help. And we're actually setting up a blog, so there'll be kind of more bigger piece, kind of more general thinking pieces about what does this all actually mean in the various contexts. I mean, if you take open protocols as an example, most everyday people will be like, well, what does that mean? Like, how is that relevant? Like, why do I care? Is this actually important? And, you need to sort of tell people, well, hey, what if tomorrow you could only, from your Gmail account, email other Gmail users? That's it.
Yeah, so education is part of the...
exactly, like, wouldn't that be a problem? You wouldn't be able to use email for work. I mean, I think that might be a good thing. But, like, for example, like this, the fact email is actually based on a protocol means that we can communicate with people in other companies using other services. This is a massive thing. And the reason email, I think, has become so ubiquitous and so prevalent is because it is so open and so transferable. We don't have the same for, Skype doesn't talk to Facebook, doesn't talk to Twitter, doesn't talk to, like, whatever. There's no way to actually communicate instant messaging. And no one is shocked or appalled because they haven't, they're not necessarily aware. But we're also missing a huge amount of potential innovation and use for some of these technologies because they are so siloed. And so we want to have a blog that explores this, that talks about how better to get involved, how to, the kind of things to do. And also, if you want to write for the blog, you're very welcome. Email us and tell, we want to have guest posts on this.
Or videos even. Maybe
videos even, yes.
Or video blogs, exactly. We're pretty open. I should also mention transcripts. We have a wonderful set of volunteers transcribing our videos so that people who don't want to, not everybody likes watching videos, we totally get that. That you can actually read it, add it to your Kindle, Instapaper, whatever you want. And please do keep helping with the transcripts. I think that's kind of really important. And eventually we'll have translations of the various things that we're doing as well, so that we make it actually globally accessible as opposed to just the English-speaking countries.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to have to call it a day soon. So is there one last thing, the final thought, your closing thought for each of you? So we'll just go Francis first. What's your closing thought?
Just that redecentralized.org obviously has to be decentralized, and step in, do stuff, make use of us, you are us, make us into what you want, and cool. So we look forward to seeing people.
Okay, cool. Ira?
So tell your friends, right? Spread the message. Get them to be more outraged and interested and, actually thinking about moving off, these massive central servers. Like, we use a lot of them because the open source solutions aren't necessarily as usable at this state, but, like, just tell everyone, tell your parents, tell your friends, your girlfriends, boyfriends, everyone. Get them to the meetups and organize meetups in your local city.
Cool. Ross?
As Francis has mentioned lots of times, it's not just about resilience and privacy, it's also about fun. So come and help us out and have some fun.
Cool.
Yay.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. That was great. I really enjoyed listening to your ideas.
Amazing. Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.